No.
Greenwich Mean Time, is that?
Whatever nuclear time.
Greenwich Daylight Savings Time.
I can get it on here. We can just use that. All right, the time is 7 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pileski.
Here.
Trustee Berkshire.
Here.
Trustee Della Penna.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here.
Trustee Lanisa. Here. Trustee Perkowski.
Here.
Trustee Trejo.
Here. We have a quorum. We'll move on to presentation of the prepared agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move to village board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the village board during the public comment and public hearing segments of the board meeting by submitting comments in advance using our online form or during the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments submitted in advance?
We have one. Angel Turner of Roselle writes, why is there no crosswalk or school zone sign on Orchard Terrace by Spring Hill School where school buses exit? Very concerning activity across from my home. I watch daily. Cars enter where do not enter is clearly marked. No patrol boys or girls anymore. Parking on street obscures children walking as well. Medina Primary has a designated school zone. We as residents have contacted school and superintendent to no avail. We do not want a tragedy here. Please look into this matter. I work nights and cannot attend the board meeting. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. I know our police department and public works departments have reached out to the school district and we're in the process of evaluating the situation. We'll give that resident and the rest of the community an update once we have further time to review this topic. So thank you. Is there anyone here tonight that wishes to make a public comment? Yes, please approach the podium.
Bill Sagi, Roselle. I just wanted to know if there was any further discussion by the board about the Greenest Region Compact, and if not, who I should contact to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did provide the board with the documentation provided by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus on it. We did get a majority of the board did solicit that they would be in support of it. We did have some members raise caveats about how they would want that resolution to look. So right now we're working with staff to put that on a future board meeting for discussion. So it'll be under new business. So that way we can discuss any modifications. And so we'll notice that to the public once we have a date determined. We've just been working quite frankly on budget. So we just had to put it on the side for right now.
Thank you for the update.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to address the board? The record show none. We'll now move on to officials and staff reports. Under my report, I'm happy to have Representative Seth Lewis present the village with a proclamation recognizing our centennial. So Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Clerk, trustees, staff, and those watching at home, the residents of Roselle. It is an honor to be here today as your state representative to, excuse me, present to you a certificate on behalf of the state of Illinois, congratulating Roselle on its 100th year anniversary. And if I may read it to you all, based on the 102nd General Assembly to the Village of Roselle, in recognition, the Village of Roselle and its commemorates its 100th anniversary on October 7th, 2022, and joins in the commemoration of the effort, dedication, and hard work that led to success and further expresses its best wishes for personal happiness and professional achievement offered by myself and my office in the state of Illinois. What an accomplishment. Thank you all for your service and leadership to this great community for 100 years and wish you 100 years more of success. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you so much. And then just two further items under my report. So we'll be, the board has been notified and we will be starting to ramp up public kind of an awareness campaign, but we'll be having a open house on Thursday, November 10th to discuss the results and some of the preliminary design ideas from the municipal campus master plan. So we've had some great participation from local businesses, residents, as well as members of this board. And so we want to solicit some public feedback. This will also be a joint open house with the library district as they're evaluating some of their facility master plan kind of visions for the future. So I think this is a great opportunity for the community to see kind of what the future may bring and to get their feedback as a part of those processes. Those will be streamed as well as posted online for those who can't make it. And of course, the materials will be made publicly available as well for people to review on their own time. So that will be very exciting. That's something we started last year that I'm really very excited to start to share with the community. And then obviously something's a little bit different. I've got my hair dyed. So I just want to congratulate the Police Association publicly for hitting their fundraising goal and happy to support their efforts to, provide those who have breast cancer some additional support and need in their treatment schedule. So as I know it's close to the chief's heart, it's close to my heart as well. So happy to do that for the community. So it is permanent. I didn't go cheap on this, so it might be around for a little bit longer. So get used to it, I guess. With that being the case, I'll move to trustees. Any reports? Wayne?
Well, on the same idea of the centennial dinner dance coming up, I got to tell you that today, a lot of the pieces were put together and it's looking like it's going to be really a cool success. There's a great committee that's been working. There's 11 other people that have been working on this and we'll give them recognition at the event. But it's 11 other Roselle residents that are pulling this wagon together. And I'm looking forward to it and everything, financial, venue, schedule, everything's coming together. The MC, a great DJ on staff. So I'm getting very excited. This was a good day today. So I look forward to everybody having a good time.
Fantastic. Any other trustees have a report tonight? All right, seeing none, village clerk.
The Bloomingdale Chamber of Commerce and Rotary Club of Bloomingdale Roselle is hosting their trunk or treat this Saturday from noon to 3 p.m. Please join us for treats, games, and fun costumes. And next Saturday, Don't Trash It, Smash It on November 5th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The Roselle Park District is hosting a pumpkin smash. The first pumpkin collections were hosted by Scarce, Wheaton, and Elmhurst back in 2014, and now it's grown to over 59 sites across the state. Last year, these annual efforts saw the composting of 242 tons of pumpkins, keeping that waste and subsequent leachate out of landfills.
Great, thank you so much. Village attorney?
No report, Mayor.
Village administrator?
No report.
All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. First, we have the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, non-controversial in nature, and will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no discussion of these items. Tonight, we have the presentation and approval of the village board minutes of October 10th, 2022. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village Roselle and GovTemp USA LLC. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village Roselle and the Flock Group Incorporated. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of agreement by and between the Village Roselle and Flock Group Incorporated. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the termination of an agreement by and between the Village Roselle and Red Speed Illinois LLC. Adopt an ordinance authorizing the participation of the Suburban Tree Consortium. Adopt a resolution authorizing and approving payments for the purchase of parkway trees. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of agreement by and between the Village Roselle and Bradford Systems Corporation for the Public Works Gear Storage Locker purchase. Adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement of understanding for maintenance and construction by and between the Village Roselle and the Illinois Department of Transportation. And adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a contract by and between the Village Roselle and Snow Systems Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder. Is there a moved? Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye. That motion carries. Moving on to the rest of our agenda, we have nothing under community development, administration, fire, police, or public works, but finance. Trustee Pierkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the accounts payable list for October 24th, 2022 in the amount of $1,521,207.19.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Prokowski,
Aye.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye.
That motion carries.
Okay, I have two things today.
It's an exciting day for finance.
Feel like a star. I'd like to move adoption of resolution regarding the proposed 2022 property tax levy for the Village of Roselle.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion or presentation? Tom, anything you want to add, or? I know you came in on your day off, so I want to make sure you get to say something. Yeah, briefly, if you don't mind. I want to get my money's worth if you're coming in.
Thank you. So on the agenda tonight is the estimate of the 2022 property tax levy. This is the first year that the PTEL rate is actually at the maximum of 5%. Due to the ongoing issues at Cook County, staff had to estimate the 2021 Cook County EAV and the 2021 Cook County tax extension in order to come up with the estimate that is in your packet tonight. So it may not be exact, it may not be correct, but I tried my best to do what I could. But this estimate is the ceiling that will be used when the board adopts the final property tax levy on December 5th. So we cannot go any higher than what's in the resolution tonight. You can go lower, but not higher. And the adopted levy, okay. And then the notice for the public hearing will be published on November 23rd.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Tom? If not, could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Prokowski,
Aye.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye.
That motion carries.
And that is all I have for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. That concludes unfinished business. We'll move to new business. We'd have a second opportunity for public comment. Does anyone wish to make a public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item, the consideration of an amendment to our village drug paraphernalia ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. Recently, a cannabis dispensary that has a preliminary license from the state of Illinois has applied for a special use permit to open a shop in Roselle. Our current drug paraphernalia ordinance outlaws any sale of drug paraphernalia to include cannabis drug paraphernalia. In order to allow this business to conduct legal state-approved sales of cannabis paraphernalia, I'm asking the board consider amending the ordinance to allow only state licensed and locally special use approved cannabis dispensaries to be able to sell those products.
Any questions from the board? And I would assume this would only move forward should there be a recommendation from planning and zoning on the special use?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Wayne?
I do have a question. Okay. I'm a little bit concerned about the use of the word cannabis paraphernalia or drug paraphernalia. Because drug paraphernalia can be syringes, it can be all kinds of other things that are beyond the use of cannabis. So first off, I would prefer that we call that cannabis paraphernalia and that they are not selling things that are used for crack cocaine or any of those other drugs that are illegal. So I think if I see anything, I would like to see that be very clear as to what, you know, I mean, if they were a flower shop, they'd be selling vases with their flowers, you know, but they wouldn't be selling something related that's illegal. It would be related to their product. So I would like to make sure that the paraphernalia is related to their product. And then to David's point, the second thing, in your presentation, you are saying 1350 West Lake Street, but what you're really saying is you want to change the ordinance for wherever a cannabis shop is located, that they would be able to sell cannabis paraphernalia.
Correct.
So I think just, we should change the little wordsmithing on this proposal. You know my stance on marijuana, so I'm not going to go on the soapbox about that. But I will say, I think we got to just make sure that we always have something to protect us should it not go south. And I know and I will just extrapolate one more time. Some of the things that I've read about cannabis paraphernalia is that it's made to try to attract the young people, similar to what vaping was guilty of doing for a while. I don't know, as a village, we can't regulate it, but it is something of a concern. So when you're starting to say what kind of paraphernalia, I think we should be a little specific on what that is. And maybe, find out what the market is allowing, what the state is allowing, but be very specific on what they're selling. I don't have a problem with somebody trying to sell something that has a synergy with their business, but not something that extrapolates further out.
So I think and we can clarify on one of those. So I think as far as on the youth attraction thing, by state law, you cannot enter a dispensary unless you're 21 years or older. So I think that piece of it, at least from
I
our
know
side,
that.
from a regulation perspective, is kind of solved. I guess I'd be curious, and we don't probably have an answer right now, but I assume the state has some language with the passage of the bill around what is deemed cannabis paraphernalia versus drug paraphernalia. Is that a fair assumption that we can work off of for this, or?
Well, and what the intent of the ordinance and the revisions that I think you have in your packet, is there the draft is in there, correct?
Correct.
Is to prohibit the illegal sale. So those establishments, other than a permitted, approved dispensary, would not be allowed to sell any drug paraphernalia at all within your community. So those gas stations, or the police would still be able to move in and stop that and issue citations under the ordinance. Only thing we're talking about is to allow where that synergy would be there between the cannabis dispensary and that paraphernalia would be, that's where that sale would be allowed to occur.
Okay.
And that's the only place. And that's what the intent is. So we could wordsmith some things and look at the language further, but that's all that we're looking at.
Bruce?
Yeah, so I do have one concern about trying to be very specific on what to sell. I think we should stay with what the Illinois legislature has passed, so that this way we don't have to come back if they add something or take something off. And I agree that as long as we stay within an approved cannabis dispensary, special ordinance, et cetera. So that way we're not into those specifics. My second is a question more of why be so specific here and with the address, if we just go with an approved special use, because we're just going to have this. If for some reason this one doesn't happen and another one comes up, we're just going to have to come back. So why not just make it to what you had said? It has to be a licensed cannabis dispensary approved through special use, blah, blah, blah. That way it's once and done.
One size fits all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
That's what the intent would be.
Yeah, but with the address, I saw the address in the executive summary, so I didn't go deep into
I
the.
don't know that that's any language we included in the.
Okay, that was what I was that was why it was a question, so I was trying to understand.
Yeah, that was only part of the memo to specify the special use.
If it's generic, I'm all good.
Yeah, it's not in there.
Yeah, I think it's more so we just didn't realize our ordinances needed to be refreshed in light of what we had decided earlier last year, and now actually having an applicant, which is good. We're learning this now instead of after the fact.
Mhm.
Any other comments? Is the direction from everyone to move forward as recommended? All right, staff has direction on that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board.
Our last item, which is a doozy, is to discuss and provide direction and recommendations from the annexation working group. So I know Cheryl and Bruce have been working hard on this with staff. So I'll invite Karen up to update us on their work.
Everyone's favorite topic.
Not going away.
All right, so
Have fun with it.
Yes, we had so much fun. There was no Dairy Queen this time though. So Jason and I met with Cheryl and Bruce to sort of bring forth a recommendation about sidewalks to the board that would apply to all future annexations. So we kind of discussed what has worked before and what hasn't worked before, challenges for homeowners, barriers to annexation, any positives that we've encountered. And we all kind of agreed on making sidewalks a case-by-case basis. So every time I present an annexation request to the village board, part of the discussion and the vote by the board would include direction on options for sidewalks. And we kind of came up with two different options. So one, the person installs the sidewalk. And then the other is they pay a fee that's associated with the village's current cost estimates for installation of sidewalks. And so these are both things that we've tried in the past. So we decided to come up with some clear criteria for staff to use now and in the future to kind of guide myself and my successors to make a decision that is within the guidelines set by this board. So those questions are outlined in the summary. And I provided 2 examples of when a sidewalk would be required and when a fee would be required. So generally, if there's a sidewalk within 1 or 2 properties of that subject property, we would require the sidewalk because that's an easy gap to fill in the future. Do we know if a street is undergoing major reconstruction? Should we have them install a sidewalk that may get torn out as part of a project, or just include it, have them pay a fee and then we install it as part of a road project? Are there natural considerations like floodplain, which we've recently discussed, wetlands, things like that, that may make it cost prohibitive for people to annex into the village? Are there other jurisdictions that will need to approve and review the sidewalks? So IDOT for Irving Park Road, DuPage County, that makes it more cumbersome and time consuming. And then is there any sort of consideration for existing sidewalks on the street? So in that second example, there are sidewalks on one side already, there are no sidewalks on the south side of the street. Why would we require someone to install a sidewalk when we have a connected pathway on the other side of the street and no other incorporated properties have sidewalks? So those are kind of the guiding principles that staff is suggesting that we sort of adopt into a operating procedure policy that can be used by staff in the future. And then Public Works provided some information on the current cost estimates for sidewalk installation. So we would just use whatever year's estimate is most recent to come up with that linear foot estimate. And then we are suggesting that we base it on a percentage of that total estimate instead of the entire thing, because that can also be very burdensome to some people.
Say
There
that
was
last thing again. Just say that last thing you just said.
a percentage of the total estimate.
Okay.
So we discussed 30%, we discussed 50%. So we were looking for some direction on a actual percentage number that we can put forward in this policy. And then obviously, because it's a case-by-case basis, any extenuating sort of properties where something is very insane or crazy, or the village board would have the final discretion to be able to decide what a property owner should do. And then because this was based on a conversation about specific properties, we provided suggestions on how some of those properties that are currently not in compliance with their agreement move forward. So we're suggesting that 151 Sycamore we enforce the sidewalk requirement because there's no floodplain on the property. And there's sidewalks nearby. 818 Juniper, because they are in a floodplain, we recommend paying the fee, and then the same applies to 817 Crest.
So Cheryl or Bruce, since you guys were part of the work committee, anything you guys want to add to what Karen had mentioned?
We recognize that this is going to take a little bit more on staff because they have to look at it from a case by case basis. We think this is the best option because situations where we had the property where there was a tree that was in the middle or the elevation was so off that it was going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars just to bring the elevation. This allows for an agreeable situation for both of those circumstances, and it still helps with the village, either maintaining sidewalks or getting the fee to which we can use to put in sidewalks where necessary, so that it's not a burden on this group's budget overall.
One of the things that we said was that the fee does not mean that there would be a sidewalk in front of that house immediately.
Or if
So-
ever,
or
because
if
depending
ever,
on,
right.
in the example that you see in the picture, because the sidewalk is up on north, we may never put sidewalk on there because there's a sidewalk on the other side of the street because people can easily use that.
We just need to be very clear on that so that people understand that when they pay that fee.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that we had talked about as part of the process, the questionnaire, et cetera, that staff would go through.
Perfect. Any trustee comments on Tom?
I just want to actually commend you guys on the work on this. This is very, I think, an excellent compromise based off of our previous discussion. Like, I'll admit, it's not 100% what I want, but that's what makes it a compromise. So I think this is a great plan to move forward with. And yeah, unfortunately, yes, it will be more on staff, but I think it's just a much sounder policy that's better for everyone involved.
Wayne?
Yeah, I also want to compliment you guys because everything you said is what is based on historical information that we've got in the last few years. And so you guys should be commended for putting that into this package. I would ask one question, and this is where I'm like, well, with that percentage you just said, if I pay a fee that's pretty close to this cost of a sidewalk, why wouldn't I put the sidewalk in? Do I have that option, or is that just going to be, no, you can only give us a fee?
I think we had discussed as giving people that option, if they want to
I'm paying
pay
for
to
it.
install it. There are certain situations where if it's a new build or a major addition getting put on a house, it makes sense to just have the person
Just say,
install it
as
then.
a resident,
Yeah.
say I don't want to have the rural great America. I want to be part of the city. Yeah, go ahead and put the sidewalk in. Do I have the option, or is it the board that tells them?
I love your optimism, but I think every resident,
Well,
the
there
reason we're
might-
talking about it comes to tells us they don't want to put it in. But I think
But
the
world is
parameters.
Full of anomalies there.
It's true. Well, but I think to your point though, usually if I read this correctly in the intent, the option to pay a fee should only be in the case where it is engineering and construction wise very difficult to put in a sidewalk, where that fee is going to be exponentially more attractive than putting it in. And if you want to go above and beyond, I don't think staff would ever reject that. But if
One point of clarity, Mr. Mayor, is yes to what you said, but also if there is no adjacent sidewalk and this house is going to
True.
be the only sidewalk with two ends to grass, then it's probably not worthwhile. And to your point, Wayne, we're suggesting a 30 to 50% fee, which would mean that for them to put the sidewalk in, they would have to either come up with the extra 50% or the extra
That's what it is.
70%,
Okay.
which is probably fiscally not what they're going to do.
The
They'll pay the
difference
fee.
here, though, is that you are actually going to get some money, because before you were getting promissory notes.
No, this is to get, you have to get this and pay this up front before you will get approved.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Anyway, nice job. I think you did a nice job.
Lee.
Yes, I was gonna say, I think the first example that you gave in terms of like engineering issues and that kind of thing would maybe be a reason to not make them put a sidewalk in, but I don't know if I agree with just there's no sidewalk yet on each side, so we're not gonna make them do it, because eventually if they come in, like if the village wants that sidewalk on that property, if it doesn't go to anywhere, that's just, shorter term. So like, I'm not supportive of just allowing that to be excluded. Secondly, I didn't see anything here about pre-annexation. So I know in the past we had some pushback from the Bloomingdale Township Highway Commissioner, who's no longer there. I'm just curious if there was any discussion with, the current supervisor in terms of if we can start installing them at pre-annexation time. That way we don't even have to run into the annexation piece and just get the sidewalk installed right away. And then the other question I have, this is more of a legal question, and I'm not obviously sure about this, so this is why I'm asking, but in the past, we were told that people that are in similar situations need to be treated the same way. So are we running the risk if we only charge 50% to somebody, but because for whatever reason, they don't have to put a sidewalk in and they're in the same situation as, hey, I have an annexation agreement that's about to get executed. One resident only pays 50% of a $10,000 sidewalk. The person across the street in the exact same situation has to pay the full 10,000 amount. Is there a risk of litigation from that person that we're saying only has to pay 5,000?
I would agree that people in similar situations have to be treated similarly. I agree with that statement. That's not what the policy is, though. I think you are identifying inside the policy, as the mayor's already said, is that first and foremost, sidewalk goes in unless these factors exist.
Right.
So then the policy in of itself would treat everybody in a similar fashion.
That's what I'm saying. Like, these would be dissimilar enough that we are treating everyone similar, basically.
Yeah,
I just want to get
I
clarity on
think
that.
that's what the policy is doing,
Got it.
treating everybody in a similar fashion.
And I'll leave
The
it,
circumstances are defined.
and I'll leave it to the board, but I think, where we have issues is part of it is we haven't, because of different record keeping and or enforcement in the past years, we have currently incorporated properties that do not have a sidewalk today. And we have very few means to go about enforcing it. So there are properties where we might have to install that sidewalk at this point, which creates some gaps. Second is, I think, from a cost effectiveness perspective, from my personal opinion at this point, if you have access to a sidewalk across the street, putting the sidewalk at someone else's expense or not, we still have to maintain that over time. And we constantly get complaints about grinding, trip hazards, the sidewalk isn't being maintained well enough. And so I think it's a change in policy, and that's where the board has to be on the same page. But I think this is great because if we have access to good sidewalk infrastructure, having it immediately in front of your house, if you don't want to install it, is putting a future burden on us for maintenance that I think allows us to prioritize our money in a way that we can put it where it's going to give us bigger bang for our buck versus continuing to provide duplicative services in a finite area. But that's just my personal opinion. But I think that's a policy decision of the board, and you have a very well put position on that. So
yeah, and I agree with everything you said. The other thing that would be good to see maybe is just kind of like a visual map where the village would want us to have sidewalks. That way it gives us perspective to say, okay, how big of an issue is this? Where would we want to fill the gaps? Even to, this discussion with if there was a resident that really, they don't have sidewalk on either side and they come to us, and to Wayne's point, they say, no, I really want a sidewalk. At least if we could tell them, hey, there is no plan to ever put a sidewalk here from the village. Every one of your neighbors, we're going to tell them we don't really care if they put a sidewalk in or not. To the mayor's point, most of them are probably going to say that they're not going to pay the full amount. So at least that person knows if it's a situation where Wayne's just wants to throw money around at concrete, that they could just say hey,
Got nothing for my $3,000, so.
yeah, no, I get it. But I'm just saying that that person at least knows up front, yeah, strategically the village doesn't even want a sidewalk over here. So yeah, I'll just pay the fee. And I get it. It's a fee that I'm kind of not getting anything for, but you are getting something for it because you're getting
water and sewer.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
at the end of the day, that to me is something that's important just to see visually. I mean, I like the visuals here, but a comprehensive view of the village and where do you guys want to see sidewalks versus where we don't want to see them? And then that way we could kind of say, oh yeah, there's how big of an issue is it? But again, the pre-annexation thing is the other key thing I think we should get an answer on is
So
that way we could get the sidewalks just built like we used to do.
So we are only tackling annexations at this point. I think staff has kind of viewed them as two related but different animals. So we can definitely reach out and begin those discussions again with the township now that leadership has changed. And we do have our GIS MGP is doing a sidewalk analysis for us to identify those gaps. And I think we're supposed to have it in the next couple months, I think. Either of you? It's on the to-do list and it's being done. I just don't know when that analysis is going to be completed.
Delapenna?
No, I am fine with
Okay. Bruce?
So there's a couple of things that I want to clarify and one for Michael. So, we are talking about go forward. So there are in potential situations where past people might come back and look and say, well, wait, that's not how it was for me. Well, that is previous policy. This is a go forward basis. And the second, Lee, is that I agree with you that we should have that kind of comprehensive view, almost put it as part of the strategic plan and maybe an objective for public works. However, I would not agree that it should be something that is dependent on this going forward. That is, in my mind, two separate things. Let's get the policy in place and then we can start enforcing the policy in those areas. Otherwise, we are never going to get off of this square zero. And we have these three properties there. So I think it's a dependency of it should be done, just not before the ordinance is passed.
And I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of staff, but as we have things come forward, we can obviously do that neighborhood analysis to make sure anything that is being reviewed has that in mind. So we can share that with the applicant at the time. So just to take a pulse, because I feel like as far as the option at hand, everyone seems to be in favor of the kind of binary choice of you're either going to be installing a sidewalk or paying an impact fee. Is that the case here? Everyone is in support of that as a go forward strategy?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm looking at Lee, who's softly nodding. So that looks like a yes. Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
So from that standpoint, which I think is I'm happy and thank you both Bruce and Cheryl on that, because I think we've tested different options and now we're going to find the right middle ground. So we've swung the pendulum hopefully back to the middle now. As far as the specific recommendation on a percent. So I know it looks like the committee was they definitely recommended a lower amount and looking at the 30 or 50%. Does anyone have a strong feeling on that piece of it, Tom?
I'm in favor of the 30%, just because of there's no guarantee they'll get a sidewalk aspect of it. And it seems like a fair amount that could then be spread, I guess, around as these fees come in and certain sidewalks are installed and others aren't.
Any other opinions from people?
I would leave it at 50 for the simple reason of, when we take the money from these people as a fee, we're fixing it based off of current dollars. If we ever have to go and buy a new sidewalk for those people, eventually, it's going to be much higher than these numbers that they paid the fee on.
So I got 130, 150.
I'd go 50 because I throw my money around like water.
All right, I got 250, 130. Lee?
I would say 50.
All right, Bruce and Cheryl? You guys are kind of,
We'll go with the rest.
okay, that's fine.
We were both going back and forth on it and we never really landed, which is why we have it as.
I think, yeah.
40.
That's a
Cheryl.
confuse it even
Yeah.
more.
So I think
It's a lot of math.
the majority consensus is 50. And I think, to me, what I see this as is really we should be trying to get staff to be able to give an answer to residents or future residents for that matter on 90% of cases. And then, the board should be looking at those 10% that, we need to define the policy better. Or if we find that we're not getting the intended actions, we can always take the policy and revise the percent if we feel like based on what we're seeing and the feedback we get, we need to make that adjustment. But 50 seems like that's where we're going to snap the line today. Lee?
I was just curious, do we want to put a maximum in there? Just because if, there was some sidewalks that were saying like, hey, there's, whatever, 200 feet of frontage, like, do we say 50% or, maximum of $15,000 or something?
I feel like that Bruce?
So the reason we didn't do that is because, again, it's very simple for staff. They know they can figure out the linear feet. They know the dollar amounts from the sidewalk program and they throw the amount at it. Simply from the fact that there is a potential that we may have to go in and put that full sidewalk in. And so we still think it's below what they would have to do with our current ordinance, which is put in a sidewalk. And therefore, we felt that it was just based on a percentage. It's the simplest math, simplest, easiest thing.
Still a discount. And I think it'd be hard to know.
Board makes the final decision anyway. So if there's, some discussion with the property owner and, they're not sure, that's something that we can always present to you and get feedback on.
And they'll be able to know what that number is before they agree to it. So we're going to tell them exactly what it is.
Yeah. All right.
And then there's the water.
But before just to confirm for sidewalks then. So the Sycamore property is outlined, you're good direction to staff there. So the two at Juniper and Crest, as you recall, the gentleman from Crest was at your board meeting. The one from Juniper has requested the board consider a different alternative, which was to do a rain garden. But the existing annexation agreements require sidewalks. We're going to go to them and now say, here's some new terms. If you agree to them, we then have to go through maybe another public hearing process. That's for our attorney to confirm with us. And if we do, there's notice costs for that. Who should bear the cost of that? Maybe it's a couple $100 to notice it in the paper because you're going to have another public hearing to approve a amended annexation agreement. So just identify, and we're going to have to go to these people and say, give us a check. And I don't know if that one resident will like that either as an option, but just letting you know, staff will do our job to communicate with them this updated policy and we'll keep you in the loop. But
We're the one that's changing it, so I think I would eat a couple $100 for the fee personally.
That was what I was gonna say as well. And this is, and we also, as a committee, are looking for and making sure that if these folks do not abide by that, we are going to go and have Michael send them a nice letter. That is what, in order for this to work, we all have to go by that. Otherwise, the committee is at waste and this whole concept is at waste.
Here's the teeth behind it.
so based on that, the fee for Juniper, the Juniper fee would be about, both these would be cut in half because this was 100%. So the 50% will inform them of that. And based on your policy, I would say we would require check in hand before a public hearing is scheduled for an amended annexation agreement that eliminates their need to put in a sidewalk. Okay.
Everyone's consensus with that?
Yes.
All right, you've got direction.
And then there's a water program. So very quickly, DuPage County is using ARPA funds to provide grants up to $3,000 for people to pay or to help people connect to water sources to get off their private wells. So obviously, first of all, Roselle is in DuPage and Cook, and we have residents in Cook that could be eligible for a similar program, but would have to be run by the village. So we're looking for direction on moving forward with setting something like that. And then DuPage County is only informing property owners that can connect to the DuPage County water system that they maintain themselves. So we would also reach out to non-residents in Roselle or residents who would be eligible for this grant through the county to connect to our water system. So just getting feedback on that.
Yeah, any direction on that from the group?
I like that. You know, that wouldn't become effective till next year when we budget it. Is that correct?
Correct, correct.
And then we should advertise the poop out of it because it's a good incentive.
I think advertising the fact that we have a different sidewalk policy, I think there's a lot of misconceptions or, well, not misconceptions. There's a lot of different ideas about what the village requires you to do. We've also done some great work earlier this year to waive or to change the recapture fees on some of these properties. We've done a lot of work. So I at this point, I think we need to brag about it. And if people still don't want to take advantage of grants from the county, grants from the village, and fee structures and requirements changing, then I don't know what we could do left to entice them besides making it free and paying for it all. So, but
There was one other thing that the committee talked about, and that is something to where you're going, Lee. We have again, a strategic push. We know of certain residents who are incorporated, who do not have city water. We're going to make an incentive to talk to them first so that we have that same kind of concept of directing some of those funds to strategic areas and then opening it up to the rest.
Yep.
everyone's consensus to move forward on? Yep. All right. Perfect. Appreciate again, Bruce, Cheryl. I know that's a lot of time and I know you guys aren't even done yet probably with all that stuff. And you know, Aaron, I appreciate you continuing to work on this. I don't think there's been a day you've worked for the village where you haven't been dealing with annexations or pre-annexations. So I do feel like the pendulum has swung a lot on this. And I do feel like we're getting close to a really good solution for the entire area. So let's see what comes. With that being said, we have no other new businesses or any other business for discussion only. Wayne?
I just want to mention one thing too about the traffic light cameras coming down. That we probably put that in our e-news and let everybody know that's a popular thing.
In the newsletter that's going out next week. So
Make sure, because that's something the residents should know, that how they're protected even better than they were with the red light cameras.
absolutely. Any other business? Not, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.